mean? The president has talked about a red line, and he's been very careful and couched when discussing a red line to talk about mass casualty events, to talk about systemic deployment. If we are seeing something like this, if it is confirmed, it seems to me is the most systemic mass attack deployment of chemical weapons. What does that mean for the red line the president has noted?
This would be a totally different scale of events. In the past, we've talked about chemical weapons being used to kill 1, 2, 5 people in numerous attacks. That always struck observers as a bit strange, more of a terror tactic than a tactic of war, using a limited amount of chemical weapon to scare your enemy instead of creating mass casualties. If this in fact is confirmed, this would be a different kind of attack. Some of the rebels were talking about well over 1,000 killed. As you mentioned in your intro, if that's confirmed, it's one of the worst war crimes, one of the worst atrocities carried out anywhere in the world in decades. The president talked about having a red line. If this is confirmed, not only is it crossed, that red line has been jumped over.
NBC News Chief Foreign Correspondent Richard Engel, thank you. Joining me now is author, journalist, and MSNBC contributor Rula Jibril. Rula, you've spent some time in Syria with the rebels. We've talked about this issue. You and I have both been, I think it's fair to say, skeptical of the efficacy of U.S. intervention. What is your reaction to the images coming out of Syria today?
This is more than a red line. Richard Engel is right. This is a moment where we need to show the regime that something will be done if he will continue. If he uses these weapons, he has to be held accountable. This guy has to not only leave, he has to relinquish power, and he has to actually give the UN access to all of these sites, because God knows who can access these sites further. I mean, if it's a failed state, you can have anybody. And we were, as you said, skeptical because there's within the Free Syrian Army this element that is very Islamist. What if in a case of failed state, there's these sites, and who have access to these sites are these kind of Islamists? We need to intervene now before than ever. Here's where I watch this and I think two things. What we've seen today, again, if confirmed, we have to say that we cannot verify the video, but it does. The circumstantial picture certainly looks like something truly horrific. It looks like Iraq. It looks what Saddam Hussein did in Iraq to the Kurds. Let's remember, and to the Iranians, when there was a civil war between Iran and Iraq, Saddam Hussein used chemical weapons. And these are similar images to what we used to see coming from Iraq, from the Kurdish area, and from the Iranian area.
This is the incident Halabja in 1980, in which Saddam Hussein used chemical agents against the Kurds.
Exactly. Now, you know, he's gaining, in the battlefield, he's gaining ground, and he's winning Assad. And his allies in the region are helping him. Iran, Hezbollah from the other hand. And he's looking at Egypt, and he's thinking, you know what? They toppled the president. We had Islamists winning. It didn't succeed. And now back to the old regime. Even Mubarak is coming back. So why I shouldn't fight in all kind of ways?
So you think Assad is making a calculation as he looks at the regional picture, saying, actually, this Arab Spring, this wave of revolution, we're now seeing retrenchment. I can hold on to this. I can stick this out.
Exactly. Also because he sees confusion by the West. We weren't able to call a coup, a real coup, for days, and till now we're not even cutting the aid from the Egyptian after they killed thousands of protesters. Look, Assad is the most Machiavellian dictator in the region, and he's looking around him and he's making a very hard calculus, saying, okay, I tested the chemical weapons, nobody protested, now I'm testing it in a bigger scale.
Okay, so let's say that is the case. Let's say that those initial reports, which were very small scale and kind of baffling in their deployment, we now see something, again, if confirmed, a mass attack, a war crime.
A war crime.
A war crime. What is the response? Because you and I have both talked about the dangers and unintended consequences of arming rebels. We've talked about the fractious situation on the ground there. We've talked about the al-Qaeda affiliated elements that are part of the rebel group, the Free Syrian Army. We've talked about the possibility of blowback, the difficulty of control. So what does any kind of escalated U.S. intervention or accountability or punishment for crossing the red line look like?
Look, we have to think about it this way. What is the least worst option that we have today? To leave the situation like this is not an option. The real option today is really to push, and not to leave before things are fixed. To push on the international community, convince the Russians. The Russians will not stand up to this.
No.
The Israelis will not stand up to this. Before we intervene, the Israelis might step in and try to intervene themselves, because this is, you know, threatening their areas, threatening the Golan Heights and other areas, and there's already communication between the rebels and the Israelis.
The thing I worry about the most is the idea that that there is a sequence of testing here about how far and what he can get away with, and if this is allowed. At the same time, it is an absolute no good options situation.
No, look, if Assad will leave, we know from now that this war will carry on for maybe for many years, let's put it this way, because we know that there will be retaliation, there will be a failed state, and there will be an Islamist element within it. But we have to understand that there is no solution until the Syrians, all of them, write a social contract where everybody is included, minorities, especially women, Alawites, Kurds, everybody inside that deal. That has to be done now before we